It's my birthday! Alright, that thing was already annoying me. Today is my birthday. It is October 5th. I am 2 days behind on the trial, so we will be doing the stuff from October 3rd. But anyway, that's not the point. Today's my birthday. So tell me happy birthday. I'm the queen of making your birthday into a week-long thing, so. Anyway, we are going to catch up on the George Wagner the 4th trial, day 15. My dog is whining because his e-collar is dead and he knows he can. Alright, I already got hot, so the sweatshirt had to go. Today we are discussing what would be day 15 of the trial. This started week 4 for George Wagner the 4th on trial for the murder of the Roden family. We started off the day with 2 testimonies that we did not get to see, so we're going to go over the summaries, and then 2 that we actually got to see that start getting juicy. Alright, so they started off on Monday with the defense's opportunity to cross-examine Chelsea Robinson. She is the ex of Frankie Roden and the mother of his oldest child, Ruger. Hold on. Brentley. The older one is Brentley. Ruger was the baby. Anyway, I missed the first part of her testimony. I guess I'll have to go back and find it. But according to her testimony, the main thing in this summary is that Robinson testified that George and Frankie grew up friends and were friends until Hannah Mae encouraged Chelsea to be friends with George. After that, Frankie cut off communication with George and told Chelsea not to talk to him either. So the friendship was never repaired after that. Kind of seems like somebody was coming on to his best friend's girlfriend, but what do I know? Next to the stand, they did call a man named Jeffrey Tackett. Alright, we went into the kitchen because I'm remaking some more tea. So, Jeff Tackett was a friend of Billy Wagner's. They had been friends since they were young teenagers. He opted to not be filmed or shown. And honestly, can't say I blame the man. Because realistically, apparently this motherfucker knew everything about everything. And he was involved in everything. So he went to the chicken fights with Billy. He knew about the drugs. He knew about all the things that were going on, all the nefarious things. Add a big spoonful of white honey. Today's tea of choice, the Bridgerton collection from Republic of Tea. Spent way too much money on this shit, but I'm absolutely obsessed. And yes, I have the rest of the collection as well. Also, the tea I'm using is the Bridgerton White Honey Tea. Super good. I'm about to repurchase it because it's almost empty. And they have new ones. And Newton got his own tea. So we didn't cover much. Go to part 2. Day 15, part 2. Continuing testimony of Jeff Tackett. Jeff Tackett is the childhood friend of Billy Wagner. And he did testify that over time, he became wary of Billy. He testified that Billy Wagner, would shoplift while out with people while using his coat, and he made Jeff and Chris Sr. uncomfortable. Tackett also alleged Billy once told him he'd gone to Mexico and quote-unquote shot a lot of people. It doesn't say when, but at some point, Billy and his wife, Angela, were arrested for illegally selling a semi-trailer of Rocky boots at the fairgrounds. I assume during a swap days type thing. And Tackett said that Billy told him Angela would never flip on him for any reason. Also, according to Jeff Tackett, a week before the Rodens were murdered, he said that Billy threw his hip out trying to steal semi-parts with Jake and George and asked Tackett to come pop it back into place. If that is not backwoods medicine, I don't know what is, and that shit probably hurts so badly. But also not really, because Billy was apparently a big fan of Vicodin. While at the house to pop his hip back in, Tackett said he saw guns and vests in Billy's room, including a .22 caliber Hornet gun, whatever that is, and 30-round clips. Billy also told him he planned to buy a brass catcher. Tackett also said that the Wagners had committed arson on 3 different occasions. He told them they used a turkey baster to catch their house on fire, which I'd like to know how. They later burned another home they owned, and Billy claimed $250,000 in insurance money. And later on, Tabitha, George's ex-wife, corroborates that. And so does Samantha, another witness it was called. During one of the fires, Tackett said that Chris Sr. was actually there, and he was the one who called 911 about the house fire. After the homicides happened, Tackett said he learned about it on television and immediately called Billy Wagner, who wasn't home. Tackett testified that he thought Billy was responsible for the murders, and a few days later, he told Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations, BCI, just that. He was cross-examined. John Parker did the cross-examination for him. He asked for elaboration about the chicken fights. Tackett said that Billy once asked him to go to Mexico with him to fight chickens after the murders, but he declined. No questions about that. Like, do you take your own chickens? How do you get a chicken into Mexico? Are you driving all the way to Mexico? It's a really long drive. Like, surely they don't let chickens on airplanes, right? Even in the cage? I have questions. Anybody got to hook up for the chicken fight and have somebody PM me? I got questions. I won't rat you out. Go to part 3. Day 15, part 3. Unfortunately, we're still talking about chickens in Mexico. Defense, John Parker asked how much money a person can make fighting chickens, and Tackett said he once saw someone make $500,000 in Oklahoma. $500,000 on a fucking chicken. I'm in the wrong business. During that fight, he said a man died, and the fighters threw around $14,000 in cash into the pit to help pay for his funeral. Like, did he die at the chicken fight? Did a chicken kill him? Tackett said they were very generous people. Tackett told the jurors that Chris Sr. owed Billy around $40,000, and that around $20,000 in cash Chris Sr. was holding for Billy was seized by law enforcement after the murders. If you owe me 40 grand, I'm not holding 20 grand for you. No. Like, that's my 20 grand now. Tackett wore a wire several times while visiting with the Wagners at their home on Peterson Road, but that each time he was there, Billy avoided him. Some more fun facts about Jeff Tackett. While he was working at the Flying W farm as a teenager, which is the Flying W farm is the one that Billy's mother owns, Billy's sister asked Jeff, how much money would it take to marry me? To which Tackett said there was not enough money to marry her. Homegirl must have been a looker. He also used to go hunting with the Wagners, and he recalled one time George was really upset and went home early once because Billy shot the buck that George wanted, and George could not shoot it. Which honestly fits this whole spoiled brat narrative that they have going on anyway. He also said that Billy and Chris Sr., Chris Roden Sr., were blood brothers and pricked their fingers and touched their blood together. We also found out Billy was a big fan of Percocet, and that his mother, Frederica Wagner, would buy Billy pain pills, and he would take them. And they were Percocets and Vicodins. I don't know if I said this, but Tackett said he learned of the murders on TV, tried to call Billy. Billy didn't answer. And then about a week later, he called the tip line and left a tip that Billy had done it. And then in September, he met with BCI agents and started going undercover. He was undercover and wore a wire 5 times and was paid $100 each time. That is pretty much all I can find from him. Obviously, he was not recorded, so I'm just going off of the Scioto Valley Guardian and WCPO and WLWT, their summaries on Twitter and on their website. So go to part 4, 3, I don't know. Day 15, part 4. Now, part 4 is going to be maybe not the last part, but this is going to start the last witness of this day, and she spilled over into yesterday. And we're going to do Monday and Tuesday today, and then tomorrow I'm going to do Wednesday and Thursday. Next to the stand, we have Tabitha Claytor. She is the ex-wife of George Wagner IV. She is the mother of the one and only Bullvine. I just had a news alert pop up on my phone that says Billy Wagner interview ain't a bunch of hillbillies that murdered the Rodens. So yes, you are. You are a bunch of hillbillies. We're all a bunch of hillbillies. Tabitha Claytor took the stand mainly to talk about what it was like living with the Wagners and to be married to George. Now, there was another witness before this, but her summary isn't on here. So I'm going to have to find it, but she was actually before Tabby. Her name was Samantha. Okay, let me back up and find Samantha's because there's some good shit in there. We have Samantha Staley on the stand. Her father worked for Frederica at the Flying W farm, and she had spent time with Jake and George on and off throughout her childhood and young adult life. Over the years, they were good friends. Her father suffered a brain bleed and a stroke. She got a hold of Angela to get a hold of Billy, who came and made sure that they had what they needed. He helped pay for things at their home so that they could set it up, replace the floorboards and things, in these old trailers. They turned to rot out, and he needed to come home in a hospital bed. And he paid an electric bill as well. Originally, she said when she was younger, they were trying to push her and Jake together, but she actually liked George more, and that George was a very bubbly and fun person to be around, and Jake was a mama's boy. I knew it. I knew that Weasel was a mama's boy. You could just written all over him. She said over the years that George had helped her buy her daughter Christmas presents and paid her electric bill. And then they had a great relationship outside of that. She didn't say anything about dating, but the way she talked, I would guess that she maybe wanted to. But he wasn't interested. Not sure. This is Samantha Staley. She is the one that was testifying about having an on and off again relationship with Jake and George all throughout her life, and she honestly had mostly good things to say about them. When asked about her relationship with Angela, she basically said that there wasn't one, and what little there was not the best. She said she is quote unquote one of a kind, describing Angela as quiet, observant, and overall unwelcoming. And apparently, the boys and Billy hid their help of her family and relationship with her from Angela. Go over to part 5. P15, part 5. 5. All right, everybody got your tea ready because it's about to get good. Sorry about that. Anyway, she said sometimes they would go extended periods of time without talking to each other. However, just before Jake began seeing Hannah Mae Roden, Staley said he called her. One summer, I got a phone call, she said. He did not know how to have intercourse, I guess. He asked if I could help him out. She said she agreed. The pair met up. She said it was a one-time thing. Even though much of her life she felt Angela and her own mother had tried to push them together, although she had been more interested in George. What in the 50 Shades of Grey wannabe is this bullshit? Yeah, she taught him how to have relations. She's not done. Samantha Staley also said that in Piketon High School, which is Scioto Valley Schools, she knew the Rodens and dated Frankie from 7th grade to 9th grade. Samantha said she did not know that the Rodens and the Wagners knew each other until Jake started dating Hannah, and she asked Jake how he knew her, and he said their families went way back. Samantha eventually got out of her parents' house and moved out on her own. She lived on a road called Waldron Hill, which is in the western part of the county, but it's not really close to any of this. And it's a connecting road, but you would have to go out of your way to be on Waldron Hill. She said that one day Hannah Mae was driving by and had Sophia in the car, and Samantha was out in the yard. She asked if Samantha was doing anything, and Samantha said no. So she asked if she could watch Sophia for a couple of hours, and she did. It's important to note here that Corey Holdren, Hannah Mae's boyfriend, at the time of her death, lived across the street. Haley said she could see Hannah Mae's vehicle up at his house. Jake, of course, found out about this, and Jake was fucking pissed. And he tried to start some drama by dragging her into it to use things against Hannah Mae in court for custody. Samantha did say that Hannah Roden was a great mother and was doing everything she could. And when she told Jake that, she said that she didn't think Jake liked that at all, but she did, in fact, tell him that. Eventually, Samantha started getting threatening phone calls from Jake and George to her mother's house about the babysitting. Go over to part 6. Day 15, part 6. We are finishing up Samantha's, and then we're going to get into the beginning of Tabitha's. Samantha said that about a month after the murders, she reached out to George, and George, and her husband went fishing. And she said it wasn't the same George that she knew. She said that the George she grew up with was eager to make other people's laugh, always laughing. He was a bubbly, fun guy. But the George who went fishing that day seemed sad, hurt, lost, and dead inside. At some point during the outing, she mentioned the murders, specifically Frankie, like she couldn't believe this happened. She can't believe they're gone. And I was pretty much told to shut the fuck up, she said. On cross, she was crossed by John Parker. She admitted that while they were growing up together, Jake consistently blamed George for wrongs that Jake had committed. The brothers were very different personalities. While George was bubbly yet shy, Jake was an overconfident mama's boy. Jake was particularly prone to telling Angela everything, while George would make some decisions on his own. Jake would go directly to his mother for her input on everything. She said, quote unquote, Jake was a very honest person, but also loves to point fingers, end quote. And also, I'm pretty sure she was a defense witness. I don't think she was a prosecution witness, so I don't know why she was called in the middle of all the state witnesses, but I'm sure there was a reason. So now we'll go back. After this, they called Tabitha Claytor, who her maiden name, I believe she said, was Breach, and then she was Tabitha Wagner, George's ex-wife and mother of Bullfine. Now, there's going to be 2 parts of Tabby's testimony, 2 days, and I'm going to split it because they dated at a very young, like super creepy young age, and then were apart for 6 years and back together. She said she met George when she was around 11 years old because her mother worked at the group home that was run by Frederica Wagner that was on the same property as the Flying W. She was taken up there to spend time with Jake and George. Yet another one that seemed to be a potential match for Jake, but apparently liked George. So good for him, I suppose. The pair began dating, and basically she said that she stopped going home. I'd like to reiterate the point when I said she was 11. She testified that the first couple times she went and spent the night with a friend who was supposed to be there for George, and then the friend quit coming. She spent the night in Jake's room, then after a couple of days started spending the night in George's room, and eventually was sleeping in the same bed with him. 11 years old. You're welcome for the close-up of my teeth, but 11 years old. What the fuck? Keep in mind, Hannah was 13 when she started dating Jake, and 11 when she met him. Go to part 7. Day 15, part 7. My kid just straight up dropped the F-bomb. Like, dropped something, almost stepped on it, and straight up dropped the F-bomb. Anyway, now that we've dealt with that. After a year of these shenanigans with 11-year-olds, George broke up with her. According to the defense, apparently he had the hots for a girl at his church. I mean, that 12-year-old was just getting too old for him. I mean, she's just elderly. 6 years later, Tabitha said she got a Facebook message from Hannah Mae Roden, who said that she was dating Jake and she wanted George and Tabitha to reconnect. That George had never really gotten over her, and she wanted them to reconnect together. She said she got a friend request from him, and they started speaking again. 2 months later, she moved in with the Wagners. Again. She was in high school. She was homeschooled up until her junior year, and then she attended Votech in Scioto County. They were engaged like a month after they started dating again. They went on a trip to Florida, and he proposed, and she said yes. But then she promptly came back and was kind of seeing a guy at the Votech in Scioto County, and he found out about it, and they got in trouble, but they stayed together. They worked it out, got married, and 8 months after their wedding, she had Bullfine. Now, it comes up again here in a bit. We're going to come back to the birth of Bullfine. So, Hannah Mae was occasionally able to leave with her mother. Tabitha said the Wagners would not allow her to leave her home or visit her family, and they did not approve of her family coming to the home to see her. And when she went to the hospital to give birth, she said her family was not allowed to come, only George and Angela. She did say she wanted her mother there, but it was overruled. She said that Angela was the rule maker in the house, and Angela decided who came and went in the house and when. She also dictated how the chores, the cooking, the cleaning, the laundry, and everything else had to be done, and if you didn't do it her way, you were in trouble. Quote, it was Angela's house, so it was her rules. It all had to be done the way that she wanted, or you either had to redo it or she'd just do it herself. The chore thing led into an incident that actually led to Tabitha leaving and catching a domestic violence charge. So, Angela had a lot of rules, and one of the more interesting ones was that she had rules about sexual interactions that you could have with your husband, and they applied to Tabby and George as well. So, head over to part 8. We'll discuss that awkwardness.
Guess what?
See you in a minute. Day 15, part 8. Y'all buckle up. This part's rough. When I tell you the third-hand embarrassment that I had hearing this today. Yikes. So like I said in the last part, Angela Wagner had rules about sexual intercourse between partners. She did not support premarital sex, apparently, but she was okay with 11-year-olds sleeping in her son's beds, but whatever. And obviously Jake was doing it, so he had a kid to prove it. First of all, Tabby's delivery of this stuff, her deadpan delivery of this, made my day. And I know she doesn't have social medias, but I know that people who know her do, and I really, 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 really hope that someone sees this that knows her and can tell her that I said she is my fucking hero. Oh my god, I love her. Also, Tabitha did an amazing job in this testimony. She didn't get super emotional. She did a little bit, but she held her ground. She was not intimidated. Even with the cross-examination, that got a little too much. A little too what were you wearing type of questioning. And she held her ground. I am so proud of her. She is top of my list. So Angela told them being Tabitha and George, who were at this point a married couple, that quote unquote to Tabby, blowjobs will send you to hell. She told Tabitha and George that oral intercourse would send them to hell and that sex was only for making babies. That's it. If you think that's bad, y'all, it's about to get real. Each night, Tabitha said she was forced to leave the bedroom she shared with her husband for a little bit of time. Now, why is that, you may ask? Quote, towards the end of the night, she would usually have me leave so she could sit in there and scratch his back and talk about the day. She would scratch his back.
You're out.
The level of enmeshment here and the level of emotional incest going on here, I don't have words for this. I'm in shock. After she was done with nightly back scratching, she was allowed to return to her room, her bedroom with her husband. After Bullvine was born, this says George moved out of the bedroom and into his parents' room, which I don't think is correct. I think it was Bullvine. She said George and Angela both decided that. Go to part 9. Day 15, I don't know what part we're on. There's a lot. Continuation of Tabby Claytor's testimony. So she testified that once Hannah Mae Roden moved in with the Wagners while she was an item with Jake, that they did not get along. Hold on. She said that her and Hannah Mae were basically competing for Angela's approval and that the approval never came for Tabitha. Angela was apparently really hard on Tabby, broke her down. Her self-esteem was nothing Tabby could do was right. Angela actually accused her of stealing $400 at one point. And all but called her an unfit mother as often as she could. After the murders and after the Wagners were ultimately arrested, her 5-year-old son was able to move back in with her. And he told her that Angela claimed that Tabby had poisoned them and was responsible for murdering the rodents. While she lived with them, their house on Bethel Road was one of the houses that they burned down on purpose for insurance. She said before it had burnt, we moved the stuff we didn't want burnt from the house to a garage type cabin that was on the property. She said they moved beds, dressers, clothing, deer heads, photographs, gun safes, and guns to the shed before torching the home to collect insurance money. The insurance company needed proof that they had the stuff in the house, and we said we had it in there. So to get that proof, Angela went and bought receipt books and wrote out receipts for stuff that looked like it may have been in the house, which kind of insurance adjusters are these? Like, what? They used the $250,000 proceeds to buy a new property, and then they put that in Jake and George's names. By the time they moved to the new house, Hannah Mae was living with the family for the majority of the time. The court adjourned about 4:30, and it will continue, and it did continue the next day with more testimony from Tabitha Clater. She went for most of the day the next day. So go over to the next part. There's a couple things I want to kind of like go over, just some little footnotes here, and we'll move on to the next day. All right, I lied because it's getting really late and I have to work early in the morning and I need to get my kid to bed and all that. And I'm old and I turned 38 today and I just want to go to bed. So we're gonna wrap it up and then I'll finish the rest tomorrow and then we'll get caught up tomorrow. So we're gonna cover a good bit of ground tomorrow. So anyway, let's wrap this up today. So two things I want to talk about that are related to this case, but were not necessarily brought up in court. I want to talk about enmeshment and emotional incest. Now, if you are not familiar with either of these terms, they can be applied in different ways. But in the context of this, we're going to look at it in a mother-son relationship, which in my limited experience with it, I mean, fortunately never been with someone who this was an issue, but in the podcasts and things like that I've listened to where this has come up, I've noticed that the majority of the instances are mother-son, which as the mother of an only child that is a boy is terrifying because now I'm worried that I will do this and I don't want to be this mother. So enmeshment is a concept in psychology and psychotherapy to describe families where personal boundaries are diffused, subsystems undifferentiated, and over-concern for others leads to a loss of autonomous development. Enmeshed in parental needs, a child may lose their capacity for self-direction, their own distinctiveness under the weight of psychic incest, and if family pressures increase, may end up becoming the identified patient or family scapegoat. Enmeshment has also been used to describe cross-generational bonding within a family, whereby a child, normally of the opposite sex, becomes a surrogate spouse for the mother or father. Hold on. The term is often applied to engulfing codependent relationships, and for a toxically enmeshed child, the adults' carried feelings may be the only ones they know, outweighing and eclipsing their own. All that is a fancy way to say mama's boy. And when it comes to the Wagners, I feel like enmeshment was rampant between Billy and his mother, with these two and their sons, and then by proxy, their grandchildren, the alienation of these women that were literally just there to control and to have these babies to continue the line. Angela wanting these children to view her as their mother proves that these women mattered nothing because all that mattered was this enmeshed family. This would contribute to the family meetings and this group mentality that was part of this murder, that if we go, we're all going, that they are trying to prove. So go to the next part for emotional incest. Last but not least, we are going to talk about emotional incest, which is called covert incest. And it is a type of abuse from a parent to a child, but is different from actual incest because there is no sexual abuse component. And actually, it is exclusive of that. So once a sexual component would come in, it is no longer called this. So covert incest, also known as emotional incest, is a type of abuse in which a parent looks to their child for the emotional support that would normally be provided by another adult. So basically what emotional incest is that you are fulfilling your needs that your partner is not meeting through your child. And that, of course, is not in a sexual nature, but that is an emotional nature. You know, the support. I need someone to talk to, tell my problems to, discuss things that aren't necessary. You know, the whole sit in bed, scratch your son's back, and talk about the day and talk about your problems. Emotional incest. And what this leads to is a blurred line in the parent child relationship. And this is usually pretty easily combined with enmeshment. And then you get these children that have this group think mentality with their parents or a parent, but then they also have this emotional tie to them where they feel like they are emotionally responsible for the emotions of this parent. In this case, it would be like a mother who thought that Billy was cheating on her and went to her sons, and she always hated their wives and girlfriends because they were competition, like for her son's affection. That is emotional incest. And it is important to note that alcoholism and substance abuse are associated with the occurrence of covert incest or emotional incest, mainly because if you have a parent that is having an addiction of some sort, this child is going to have to fill in the gaps. It's also called by some people unboundaried bonding, in which the parent or parents use the child as a mirror to support their needs rather than mirroring the child in support of the child's emotional development. So basically, between the two of these things, we are creating a hot mess, disaster waiting to happen of these two emotionally stunted men that are later going to bring these young, impressionable girls into this to further the cause. That's all for today. See you tomorrow. Thank you so much for the happy birthdays.